Hi, I'm going to read you a book called How I Went From Bad to Verse. So let's begin. Chapter 1. How much control do you have over your mouth? I mean, does your mouth pretty much say what you wanted it to? Or does it blabber out whatever it wants to? I used to have pretty good control over my mouth till this one time I'm going to tell you about. But first, I guess I should tell you who I am and stuff. My name is Zach. I'm 10 and a half, and I'm in the fifth grade at the Horace High White School for Boys. That's in New York City. My folks are divorced, and I spend half my time with each of them. In my English class, we're writing poetry now. We're studying a poem by a guy named Joyce Kilmer. I don't know too many guys named Joyce, but my English teacher, Mr. Hoffman, swears Joyce Kilmer was a guy. Anyway, this guy wrote a poem about a tree. It starts, I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree. What's the point of comparing poems to trees? I asked Mr. Hoffman. I don't get it. Trees are going to win, hands down. I mean, can you climb a poem? Can you get fruit off a poem? Can you stand under the shade of a poem on a hot summer day? You can't. I mean, I just don't get the point. It's clear Zach has something very strong feelings about trees, said Mr. Hoffman to the class. Zach, I think you should write a poem about a tree. In fact, I think everyone in the class should. And to inspire us, let's go to Central Park and really study trees. Everybody liked that idea, so off we went to Central Park. We lay down in the grass. Mr. Hoffman passed around a bag of Fritos. We stared up at the trees and tried to make up poems about them. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be. In fact, it was impossible. I can't do it, I said to Mr. Hoffman. I can't even come up with a single rhyme. Zach, you haven't been here 5 minutes, said Mr. Hoffman. Give it time. Okay, I said, but I knew he was wrong. Then something bit me on the butt. A mosquito or something. I smacked it. After a while, it started to itch. I began scratching it pretty hard. Mr. Hoffman saw me and frowned. Zach, what are you doing? He asked. I was about to answer him when suddenly everything got kind of blurred. Sir, a bug just bit my butt, I said. I'd prefer you didn't use the word butt in my class, said Mr. Hoffman. Then things got even more blurred, and words I hadn't meant to say started walking out of my mouth. I said, what would you rather hear, a word like rump or rear? Either of those would be better, said Mr. Hoffman. I didn't mean to answer, but I did. Perhaps you wouldn't mind if I called it a behind, or depending on their use, a poop deck or caboose. Zach, said Mr. Hoffman, smiling, you're rhyming. See, I knew you could do it. I wanted to tell him I wasn't doing it deliberately, but that I didn't do anything but rhyme now. Instead, I said, my father's Uncle Manny calls a bud of Fanny. My aunt Sophie, who is tiny, calls my butt a Haney. Grandma Leah, who is pushy, calls my butt a tushy. Oh, very good, Zach, said Mr. Hoffman. A couple of the guys nearby started giggling. Mr. Hoffman's smile had kind of frozen on his face. I didn't want to say anything else, but I started blabbering again. Our baker who likes puns sometimes call it buns. I also know some geeks, who call their butts their cheeks. Mr. Hoffman's face had gotten cloudy. That is enough rhyming now, he said. I certainly didn't want to talk in rhyme after that, but but I just couldn't help it. I said, in England, I thought it's dumb. They call a butt a bum. In France, where folks are merrier, they call a butt a derriere. And last spring, I think on Easter, I heard someone call it keister. But call it can or bottom, it is clear that we're got 'em. The guys were laughing. Mr. Hoffman looked really mad. Zach, he said, if you don't stop rhyming, I shall send you home. I squeezed my jaws together so I couldn't blabber any more rhymes, but it was no use, I said. I meant no disrespect. It's not what you'd expect. I swear to you that I'm really trying not to rhyme. Mr. Hoffman phoned my dad. Chapter 2. By the time Dad came to the park to get me, I was really dizzy. Also, I was beginning to sweat like it was the middle of August, which it wasn't. Dad felt my forehead. Zach, you're burning up, he said. I think you have a fever. I was feeling so weak by then, I couldn't even speak. That helped me into a cab, and we went directly to Mr. Kropotkin's office. Dr. Kropotkin's office. Well, said Dr. Kropotkin. Zach, it is sad. It's always interesting when you come. Here's your little friend from outer space with the two hearts. Fine, said Dad. So what's the matter now? asked Dr. Kropotkin. Is Zach turning into a cat again? No, said Dad. Since I can still see him, he must not be turning invisible again, said the doctor. So what's the problem? My teacher sent me home because I made a poem, I said weakly. Because you made a poem? Said Dr. Kropotkin. Making poems is an art. I can't understand why you were punished for making a poem. I wouldn't have if I'd stopped. I rhymed until I dropped, I said. Says Dr. Kropotkin. Well, that's different. If you couldn't stop, that's a different kettle of fish entirely. Have you ever heard of a condition like this before? asked my dad. Dr. Kropotkin didn't answer. Instead, he put his stethoscope in his ears and listened to my chest. Then he had me get undressed. When he saw my butt, he frowned. He said, tell me, Zach, have you by any chance been beaten by a tick? I thought it was mosquitoes. I got bit while eating Fritos, I said. The doctor nodded his head. Then that explains it, he said. What do you think he has? asked my dad. Lyme disease, said Dr. Kropotkin. Lyme disease? Repeated my dad. You mean it's like a sneeze? My rhyming's a disease? I asked. The doctor nodded. It is serious, Dad asked worriedly. No, not if we catch it early, said the doctor. I want Zach to go straight to bed. He should stay warm and drink lots of fluids. And by all means, avoid everything that rhymes. Greeting cards, songs, especially rap music, anything of that sort. If he isn't feeling any better by tomorrow, I want you to bring him right back here. We went home in a cab. As soon as we got inside the apartment, Dad gave me dinner and then put me right to bed. The next morning, as I started walking up, even before I opened my eyes, I knew something was terribly wrong. I couldn't feel the bed underneath me, and something was pressing lightly against my head. Slowly, I opened my eyes. Oh no, I was floating about 8 feet above my bed, bobbing right up against the ceiling. Chapter 3. My head was touching the light fixture in the middle of the ceiling. Dad, it's really bad, I yelled. Dad came running into my room. Zach, he said, what are you doing on the ceiling? I said, I dreamed I was eating baked cod. I awoke with a feeling quite odd. I opened my peepers and said, jumpin' jeepers, there's no bed under my bod. I can see that, said Dad. But are you all right, Zach? How are you feeling? You're asking me how am I feeling? What I'm feeling is not so appealing. I feel like a goon or a helium like a balloon, just bobbing my head on the ceiling. Okay, Zach, said Dad. I'm going to get you down, son. Don't worry. Dad reached way up, grabbed me by the foot, and pulled. I floated down to the bed. Then I bounced off the mattress and floated back to the ceiling. Okay, said Dad. I think I know that we have to do. Once I have you down on the bed, I'll tie you in place. You're going to tie me up? I'm not a little pup. I said, No, I know you're not a pup, said Dad. But once I get you down, I have to keep you in one place. Dad raced out of the bedroom. Then I heard him in the kitchen banging cupboard doors open and closed. A minute later, Dad came back. He was carrying rope, a dust cloth, and a light bulb. As long as you're up there, he said, could you dust the top shelves and change the burned out bulb? I groaned loudly. Okay, said Dad. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Let's get you down now. Dad pulled me gently down to the bed again. He tied my ankles to the bedposts. There we go, said Dad, but whatever I was pulling me upwards was awfully strong. I slid out of the rope and floated up to the ceiling. Okay, that wasn't such a good idea either, said Dad. Let's go back to the doctor. Wait, I have to get my water, so please wait. Well, I'm going to read chapter 4. No, I'm going to read to chapter 1 to chapter 3, okay? Dad pulled me gently down to the bed again. He tied my ankles to the bedposts. There we go, said Dad, but whatever was pulling me upwards was awfully strong. I slid out of the rope and floated up to the ceiling. Okay, that wasn't such a good idea either, said Dad. Let's go back to the doctor. He pulled me down and helped me change into my clothes. I held onto the bedposts to keep from floating upwards again. When I was dressed, Dad made a little harness out of the rope and put it around my chest. He attached one end of the rope to the harness. The other end he held. Then we carefully made our way outside. We must have been a strange sight, a man walking with a floating boy on a leash. People on the street tried not to stare, but a little kid we passed thought we were the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. "Mommy, why does that man have a floating boy?" he asked. "I don't know, dear," she said, "but it must have something to do with Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade." This is Zach floating, and this is Zach's dad. Okay, thank you for listening. Please subscribe my channel. Bye. See you in the next video.